Oh, let me get a Coke. Sorry about that. Oh man, I really am sorry about that. I actually did mean to have a Coke in my hand when I started this podcast. I'm not getting paid for this shit. What am I apologizing for? You don't want to watch it? Go somewhere else. Oh, that's the stuff. Oh, that's the stuff. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Oh, that's the stuff. Oh. Last week was one of the most controversial podcasts that I put out to date. And such was the response that I had gotten as a result of this podcast. The public is just clamoring to hear more of my personal story. What happened to me as a child. I thought maybe I should do a follow-up podcast, which is something I don't usually do, just to kind of fill in some of the details. And quick recap, when I was a kid, I had meningitis, which caused me to have brain damage and to become slightly retarded. And my mom took me to school. This is before I learned to speak. It took me years to learn how to speak. I'm 51 now, and I learned how to speak. It wasn't until I was like 50. Hence the reason why I'm doing this podcast. It was a long time before I could speak. So my mom, she took me to school, and because of my erratic movements, they had to tie me to a chair, and because of the non-verbal utterances, they had to stick a rag in my mouth. So that's the basis of where my personal abuse took place, because the kids and the teacher every day would leave for recess, and that's when things started to go wrong, because they left me tied to a chair alone. It was horrible, with a rag in my mouth. And basically what happened is a local priest called Father Michael Cleary, he would come into the room and he'd unbutton my pants and he'd start licking my ding dong, which was really, really hard for me, to deal with. And I couldn't speak. I said this I told the producer in the last podcast. But in my head I was saying, I was screaming like violently, leave me ding dong alone, but he kept licking it, and that's a very personal and private thing for me to share with an audience. It's a very emotional thing, because nobody wants to have their ding dong licked. Well, I mean, by a priest, right? It's a horrible. It's assault, but I would think about it many years after, and it would be hard for me to have relationships with women. Like, we'd be kissing, and It was hard for me to get intimate. And as soon as they went for my ding dong, I'd start crying. Women don't like that, you know. It's just nobody likes that, you know. And I'd have to say, you know, I don't mean to. I don't mean to be offensive. I don't mean to put a dampener on things, but I don't. You can't touch my ding dong anymore, you know. And so that's basically what happened. And many years later, I actually, believe it or not, decided to face my accuser. I went to Father Michael Cleary's house, and I knocked on his door. I was terrified, close to tears. And he came out, and he didn't recognize me. And by this stage, I'd learned how to speak, and I developed exponentially. And he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah. You're the priest that licked my ding dong when I was tied to a chair." And he was like, "What? What? I don't know what." I said, "You do. You licked me ding dong, and you did it for years." And he's like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about." And I said, "You do. I know you." He goes, "I never touched anybody's ding dong." And I said, "You touched mine, and you're a bad man." And he goes, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about." And I said, "Yeah, you do. You know what I mean? You do. For years, when I was tied to that chair in the classroom, you come in and you start licking me ding dong. You know exactly what I'm talking about."